everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Steven.
And I'm Nick.
And we're going to be doing a full set review for March of the Machine Limited. Commons and uncommons first, because there's a lot of cards in this set. But before we get started, this episode is brought to you by The Metagaming. If you're looking to pick up some new sealed product for your kitchen table draft or need some singles for a new constructed deck you might be putting together, they've got you covered. You could even pick up all your Magic the Gathering accessories, including sleeves, dice, playmats, binders, you name it.
Yeah, and they also have an amazing community of Magic players, not only for Draft and Limited, but Commander, Modern, Pioneer, and even Standard?
Does anyone actually play Standard anymore?
I have no clue. I don't.
Anyway, if you're local to Long Island, New York, and you're looking for an amazing community of Magic players, come on down. We do drafts every Sunday, and you can come draft with me.
And me.
Please.
And if you want to pick up any gear from the meta, just check out the link down below. You can also check out their event schedule if you're local. Use the code POD5P at checkout to get 5% off your order.
All right, awesome. So before we start, let's just go over pack contents real quick because this set is weirdly complicated.
Yeah.
Each pack contains one battle, one TDFC, so that's a transforming dual face card,
Okay.
and one multiverse legend. Each pack also has a 50% chance of having a Tarkir gain land in the basic land slot.
Okay.
We'll go over that a little bit more when we get to the lands way later. But just know that there's a bunch of slots that are specifically meant for certain types of cards. We're going to be starting off with the Signpost uncommons, a set of 10 uncommons, one for each color pair. So 10 uncommons, one for each color pair, that kind of tell you what you're supposed to be doing in a color pair in Limited. And so let's just kick this off right now. We're going to start with Botanical Brawler, which is green-white for an elemental warrior. Starts as a 0/0, but it does come into the battlefield with 2 1/1 counters on it. Has trample. And whenever one or more 1/1 counters are put onto another permanent you control, if it's the first time 1/1 counters have been put onto that permanent this turn, put a 1/1 counter on Botanical Brawler.
So right off the bat, I mean, green-white looks like it's all about 1/1 counters, and looking a little bit beyond in the set, incubators seem to be putting 1/1 counters on permanents. I think that's why they specify permanents there. I mean, this card seems super powerful. It's a 2/2 for 2, and in that green-white deck, and it looks like green-black delves into it a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
This thing's gonna grow very quickly, and trample is gonna push it through very fast.
Yeah, it does also work with all the backup cards. And we'll be going over what some of these mechanics mean a little bit more as they show up. We don't want to do an entire walkthrough of all the mechanics right at the beginning. But Botanical Brawler should kind of just work with everything you're doing in the set and is an aggressively costed 2-drop. I would probably give it a B.
A full B?
Honestly, I think so, yeah. Like I said, I think it works with basically everything that the set is doing. It does die a little bit easily before it starts growing, but I think it's okay if your 2-drop dies easily.
Yeah. I might give it a B minus. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, B minus is fair.
Yeah. So moving on, we got Elvish Vat Keeper. This is the black-green Signpost. It's 1 black-green for a Phyrexian Elf, 3/3. When it enters a battlefield, there it is, our first instance, Incubate 2, which for all who don't know, that means it says right there, create an incubator token with 2 1/1 counters on it, and it has an ability that costs 2 mana. Transform this artifact, it transforms into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature. So it keeps those +1/+1 counters, so it's essentially a 2/2 that you just have to pay an additional 2 mana for. We're going to see a lot of that going forward. And this one has an ability, 5 mana, transform target incubator token you control, double the number of 1/1 counters on it. I really like this card. 3 mana, 3/3 is already good. Comes with a 2/2. You have to pay a little extra for, but you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm super interested in how black-green actually ends up playing in this format. Because that 5 mana ability to transform an incubator and double the number of 1/1 counters on it, on a lot of incubators, because a lot of times it's going to say incubate 1 or incubate 2. Paying 5 to turn it into a 2/2 or a 4/4 isn't a huge deal. It's nice if you have the extra mana lying around, but in modern day Limited, you don't always have the extra mana lying around, and it might be a better idea to play impactful spells instead, right? So that's a little bit of a worry for me. You do have some things, like there's an uncommon that incubates 5, I think.
Yeah.
So if you want to try to live the dream and flip into a 10/10, then like more power to you. I'm also just not sure for some of those cards that do the big incubate numbers. Like we'll see as we get through, but there's like a 4 mana 0/1 that incubates 5. Is that a good card? We'll find out a little bit later. But black green is a little bit of a shakier archetype to me, I think. I want it to be good. I think I'm good to start this one at a B minus, just because again on rate you're getting a 3/3 for 3 that comes with a free 2/2 and has a little bit of extra upside. What do you think?
I feel like this card does, because it's a 3 mana 3/3, already a very reasonable rate. Comes with that 2/2. And this set, in my opinion, so far, just looking at the cards, it looks slow. It does not look like you're gonna get like beat like in 5 turns, like in Phyrexia, all will be won.
Yeah, it's definitely slower
So
than that.
that being said, mana sinks are a great thing to have when your format is slow. And I mean, turning all those incubator tokens you've been littering onto the field into doubled power creatures, this format could look like 5 mana looks like nothing, you know?
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I've been seeing personally. I don't know what you think the speed of the format's going to be, but I think B minus right now is totally reasonable.
Okay.
Though. I'm fine keeping it there.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Like it's still a strong uncommon for sure. Next up, we have Halo Forager. 1 blue black for a 3/1 fairy rogue with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may pay X. When you do, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with mana value X from a graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. So it's like a Snapcaster Mage.
It is like a Snapcaster Mage. I actually really like this card. I think that for 3 mana, a 3/1 flyer is a completely reasonable rate. We've seen stuff like that before. And that's a powerful ability in games where you're going to be getting to 5, 6, 7 mana to repeat, probably a kill spell, which there seems to be quite a few of in this set at like lower rarities. On your 3/1 flyer, that's great. Seeing, I would pay 6 mana for a 3/1 flyer that destroyed target creature when it entered. And I know that you might look at that and see a ceiling, but the floor is on turn 3. I played a 3/1 flying creature.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how do you feel like if you have that plus a much like weaker than normal, I guess 3-drop? Are you inclined to play the Halo Forger first in most decks just to get the 3/1 flyer down and start swinging? Or do you really want to hold on to it and try to get that extra value out of the ETB?
It depends on the matchup. If that matchup is going to be slow, I think getting out ahead might be a little bit better. But it's hard to say. I think it's really matchup dependent, honestly. And we will see. It looks like there is a fast deck in this format, or a couple of fast decks. So we'll see if holding your Halo Forger is good or not. There's a world where I'm completely wrong. The format's super fast, and this card is terrible. But with the assumption that it's not, I mean, we might do it 3 times in a row. I like a B minus for it. I think that the ceiling is really high and the floor is just fine. Maybe that's a B then.
I think I'm good to play it safe with the B minus as well. One thing I do want to point out is that on that ETB, it doesn't say your graveyard.
No, it does. Wow, it does not.
Yeah, it says a graveyard. So
That's
if your
awesome.
opponent has something, then you could. I mean, granted, you need to. It doesn't have that rider where it's like use any color of mana to cast it.
Right.
So, like, if you're the blue-black deck playing against the red-white deck, you don't get to just steal whatever random removal spell they have unless you have those sorts of mana. But every once in a while, you'll be able to get someone with that.
You do. Look, you may pay X. When you do, you can cast target instant or sorcery with X without paying its mana cost.
Okay.
So you can pick anything.
Okay, great.
B.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, B. I'll give it a B. Especially, like, there are a couple, and we're going to see this way later, not today, but a couple of, like, really good rare instants and sorceries that copying with your Halo Forager is probably really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. This is one that I'm really excited for. This is Joyful Storm Sculptor. That's 3 blue red. Is that right?
You got it.
The camera's perfectly blocking the mana cost, and that's
Yeah.
it. For a 2/3, when it enters a battlefield, you make 2/1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. Whenever you cast a spell that has Convoke, Joyful Storm Sculptor, that guy, deals 1 damage to each opponent and each battle they protect.
Now, what creature types is Joyful Storm Sculptor, Nick?
Oh, he's a human shaman.
There we go.
Thanks.
That's relevant.
Yeah, apparently. I really like cards like this. I really, for one, so glad to see Convoke back. I started with M15, and that's when they put Convoke, I think, on every color, not just green white
Pretty
from
much,
Selesnya. And to see it back in a set, and it seems to be utilized in blue red, no less, which is pretty odd. I think there's one card at least of every other color that also has Convoke, but blue red seems to be the Convoke deck.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this card.
So yeah, it's 3 bodies spread across just that 5 mana payment, and it's 4 or 5 total that you get in terms of power and toughness. Now, the trigger to deal 1 damage to each opponent in each battle they protect every time you cast a spell with Convoke. I mean, this is a 5-drop, right? So your hand is likely going to be running a little bit lower by the time this comes out. And granted, blue-red does have a couple of ways to refill its hand in this set. So we'll see how fast of a deck the red-blue deck ends up being. Because, you know, with certain color pairs, you're like, oh, red-white's going to go fast because it always goes fast, right? But blue-red could kind of go in either direction. It could be that you're really trying to just commit bodies to the board immediately, and then they end up helping you cast random spells later on.
Yeah. I have a strong eye. Any card that interacts that like that with battles, I'm keeping an eye on, because honestly, battles, at least in my like trying to rate them, has been pretty difficult because we've never played with them before. So I have no idea. But anything that weakens battles without having to dedicate an attacker to it, I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, we chose a good set to do our first set review.
Yeah, right?
The one that has the first new card type in 15 years.
Yeah, so I think I'm okay with a C+. I would never, so far, I don't think I'd ever start a draft with this unless like Convoke winds up being the best mechanic by a long shot. But I think that in that deck, this is going to be a card you're looking for.
Yeah, I think C+ is probably good as well. I'll be pleasantly surprised if it turns out that it's better than that. Again, it does have a reasonably high floor because that's just so much power toughness and so many bodies. But like I said, it is a high mana value for your engine to start paying you off with other spells, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so Marshal of Zhalfir. White-blue for a 2/2 human knight. Other knights you control get +1/+1. And then it has white-blue tap another target creature. White-blue might be knights in this set.
It is, yeah. This is, personally, I think this is a fantastic card. There are a lot of knights among white and blue. Just a 2-mana lord is already something I'm really looking forward to playing. I love 2-mana lords, who doesn't? And the fact that it can just,
it's
2 mana
tapper on top of that?
2 mana, tap another target creature. No stipulation, just do it. I really like this card. I think that you're going to be, if you're looking to draft knights, you're going to be taking this one highly.
Yeah, I think it's going to kind of be like Blue-White Soldiers was in Brothers War. It's kind of weird that they did 2 like weird class type tribal things for a couple of standard sets back to back, basically. But the Blue-White Soldiers deck back in Brothers War was strong, but also fairly easy to put together. Like the Convoke deck might be a little bit tricky. You have to balance your cards that make multiple bodies with your cards that have Convoke on them. Marshal of Zhalfir tells you, hey, put every knight in your deck, and you'll probably be fine. Yeah. And a bunch of the knights are just like really good on rate. Like a couple of the white and blue knights, just at common, are like some of the better commons in the set even. So like, I definitely wouldn't go below B. I don't know if B+ is correct on this, but I think B is a good place to start.
Yeah, I think A is hard to get to, so B+ has to be a little bit harder. I'm cool with a B here, but I wouldn't be surprised if this card plays much better.
Yeah.
Because my thing is, with this set, looking at the spoiler so far, set seems really bomby. Yeah. Seems like there's a lot of really good cards. Tapping down their best thing until you get a removal spell to get rid of it, and then tapping down their second best thing. I love that.
Yeah, it's a little color intensive. That's really the only knock I have against it on the tap target creature thing. But that's like a minor gripe, right? Like, we've had sets before where the 2-mana Lord didn't have any other text on it, and it was still one of the better uncommons to take out of a pack. So.
Right. Well, you don't even need to use this ability on turn 3. If you don't have anything else to do, sure. But then it's going to be more relevant by the time it's turn 5, turn 6.
Exactly.
And then by that point, you should have the extra mana to spare. Because, I mean, I'm assuming Knights is an aggressive deck.
Yeah.
So the curve's going to be lower. Let's move on to Mirror Shield Hoplite. This is red-white for Human Soldier, 2/2 Vigilance. And whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a backup ability, copy that ability. You can choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. So backup is something we haven't covered yet. Essentially, quite a few creatures, I believe it's just creatures,
all creatures
have backup 1, or do they come with multiple numbers?
There's different numbers for it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
it's usually backup 1, but a couple of them do have higher backup numbers.
So it pretty much says when this creature enters the battlefield, you can put a 1/1 counter on a creature. It could be itself, it could be another creature. If you put that 1/1 counter on another creature, it gains the following abilities. That's what it says. And then anything below it, whether it's just keywords, flying, trample, vigilance, or like, I think there's some that's like when this creature dies, draw a card and stuff. So you can pretty much gift that ability to another creature for a turn.
Yeah, the only creatures that have backup, that have abilities above the backup, are where it doesn't matter at all. Like the creature has flash, for example, and giving that keyword to a thing that's already on the battlefield just is irrelevant,
Right. So this 2/2 Vigilance for 2, I'm already into it. I like it. It's totally fine. Copying all of your backup abilities. So that means 2+1 counters, right?
It does mean that you're going to get, so backup 1, 2, 3, you will get twice as many 1/1 counters.
There you go.
You can put it onto different creatures. So if you had, let's say, Mirror Shield Hoplite and another random 1-drop, you could put the ability and the counters on both of them. And I don't think at common and uncommon this is relevant, but you do technically give those abilities again. So if you are, let's say it's just like, I don't know, backup 1 with flying. Double flying doesn't mean anything.
Right.
But if it's backup 1 with when this creature dies, draw a card, that will trigger twice if that creature does then die. Or it could trigger for either creature that you did backup onto.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that. Haven't played with backup yet, but honestly, seems strong. I like the ability a lot. And I think this card enabling backup to be even better. I think that I like a B- for it right now. It doesn't do the thing itself. It's a 2/2 Vigilance by itself. You need to play something else to make it work for you. Whereas like Marshall of Zalfir before us just does its thing by itself. I would play that in a deck that didn't have Knights. Would I play this in a deck that didn't have backup? Probably not.
Yeah, I do think that the red-white deck might be a little bit of an eggs in one basket kind of situation too. Because if you're playing backup creature into backup creature, when you play your backup creature and you announce your target, your opponent can just kill the creature in response, right? So that's something to watch out for. And if you keep putting all the 1/1 counters on the same thing, then like eventually that thing will get removed. And if you're left with these random 3-mana 2/1s and stuff like that, that might not feel too great. That said, I do think that if any deck in this format is going to be like the fast one, surprise, it's red-white. And some players in this format are going to try to fiddle around with slow stuff far longer than they're supposed to. And if you're in position to punish them, then go for it. Let the person who's trying to play 5-color Omnath completely just fall apart as you hit them with 3/3s and 4/4s and stuff.
I like hearing you call yourself out because we all know that that's what you're going to do. And I'm going to be the red-white player running you over. And you're not going to learn.
Listen, if they let me get away with it, then I'm not really inspired to learn anything, right? Like, when I'm the only person at Dominaria United draft that's doing the domain thing, and then I just run everybody over, then like, why would I learn from that?
That's their fault.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not a failing on my part. I'm flawless. It's just other people.
Wow. That is a character piece right there for Steven.
Let's move on. Okay. Mutagen Connoisseur. That's a great name. One green blue for a 0/5 Vidalcan mutant with flying and vigilance. Mutagen Connoisseur gets +1/+0 for each transformed permanent you control.
There are a lot of them in this set.
There
There are a
are
lot of transform permanents. The incubators count as transform permanents.
battles can, if you manage to beat a battle.
Yeah, dude. Wow. An 05 blocker. That's the worst this thing's gonna be. Flying vigilance.
Yeah, at what point, power-wise, are you happy with this card? Like, because a 0/5 blocker is totally fine as a floor, but it's not like I'm first picking you out of a pack as a
No.
floor, right? Like, it really, I don't think it has to get that high, though. Like, a 2/5 flying vigilance for 3
I
is
agree.
really annoying.
I entirely agree. Because you could just keep plowing that in, even like they're 2/2 flyers or whatever, just can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And then you're just gonna keep piling on these transform permanents. And it's just going to get bigger.
Well, that's another question I have is how many transform permanents are you realistically actually going to get out?
The thing is, if most of your cards just put an stinking incubator on the board, like
blue-green will have some incubators for sure, but I don't think it's going to have like a ton of them.
Okay.
And let's say, because it is going to count your battles and it's going to count your random transforming dual face cards. Those are cards that your opponent's already incentivized to destroy or otherwise get rid of. And you can't really like turbo those out because you're going to say, okay, I play my 2-mana 2/1 that will transform someday. And then someday comes around, you say, okay, I'm ready to pay 6 mana to transform it. At which point the transform card is going to be good enough on its own for sure. But that is a lot of investment to get 1 point of power onto a mutagen construct, right? So you're saying you probably really need to lean into the incubators on it.
I think that this deck has potential, and this card is going to be one of the stronger cards in the deck. I'm comfortable at a C+, personally.
Yeah, I think C+ is a decent place to start it as well. I'm just excited for blue-green to be a playable color pair in a draft set again.
You could have jinxed it there. You could have jinxed it.
I could have, but like, listen, there's really nowhere to go but up compared to Brothers War and Phyrexia, right?
You'd be surprised. You shouldn't have said that.
Why don't you surprise me with the next uncommon on our list, Nick?
Oh my god, surprise! It's Rampaging Geoderm. It's 2 red-green for 3/3 trample haste. And oh, look at that text. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. But if it's attacking a battle, gets a permanent +1/+1 counter.
And that's what creature types is it, Nick?
It's a dinosaur beast. Oh god. That's some incentive to attack battles. That's something that I've been worried about going into this set. Am I going to want to attack battles, or am I just going to take the effect on the front and just say, okay, I don't need my 4/5 whatever it is. I got that effect. It'll just sit there.
Right.
This is some incentive to start, making your creatures bigger. Because I mean, essentially, if you have a battle on board already, this thing can make itself a 4/4, and especially on the play, a 4/4 is not often getting blocked off the field.
Yeah, I mean, it always attacks as a 4/4 trample haste if you want it to, right?
Right.
And if for some reason you don't, it only says when you attack. It doesn't say when you attack with this creature.
True.
So you can just attack with something else and put the counter or just the 1/1 boost elsewhere. But even if you don't, again, it's basically a 4/4 trample haste for 4, ignoring everything else. And
I like that.
I think this one's actually like probably one of my favorites so far.
Yeah, I mean, I love red-green, and this thing seems to be doing exactly what red-green wants to be doing, which is just hitting fast and hitting hard.
Yeah.
That being said, what would you rank this thing?
I feel like it's definitely not lower than a B. I don't know B. Part of me wants to say B+, but that might be really stretching it.
I think that's stretching it.
Like, I do think that this has the potential to be one of the better uncommons in the set, but yeah, B is a safe place to start. I do think red-green is just going to be interesting because, like you said, there has that tension between, am I supposed to actually attack my opponent's battles, or am I supposed to just kill them? Just end the game that way. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But red-green does have a couple of cards that just interact with battles. You'll see a couple of things that say, like, oh, it does some damage to a battle on top of that. I think there's even a battle that does damage to battles, but we'll find out together.
Yes, we will.
So I think that there's also going to be other ways to get battles flipped in the first place, in red-green especially.
Okay.
That's going to make that archetype better than it might seem at first glance.
Hey man, I'm cool with a B for now on this thing.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to casting that one for sure.
All right, so Sculpted Perfection is 2 white-black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, incubate 2. Phyrexians you control get +1/+1. You don't like it?
I'm not into this.
I'm glad I'm not the only one, actually.
That's 6 mana for a 3/3 if you want to flip that incubator. And there aren't nearly as many Phyrexians as there were in the last set. They're still here.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong.
There's still a lot of them, not for nothing.
Yeah, and black white wants to be in that, but unless you're curving out, 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, or at least 2-drop, 3-drop into this, even that, I don't really want to be playing this on turn 4. And then, it comes turn 6, turn 7, maybe I can flip the incubator the same turn. I'm still not super thrilled about it. A Lord, but it's not a Lord, it's an Anthem.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty specific Anthem. The odds that, at least in Sealed, that you'll have a full Phyrexian deck are pretty low. And even in Draft, if all my creatures aren't benefiting off of this, or, at least 90% of them, not super into it.
See, I think that you're going to be able to have it where most of your deck actually does get the bonus off of this. Because every incubator token is that there's a bunch of random Phyrexians just in general, and all of the transforming dual face cards, I believe, all flip into Phyrexians.
Okay.
But granted, you don't play bad cards to make your good cards better, right? So, like, a lot of those transforming cards are already going to be pretty good once they hit the backside. +1/+1 boost isn't really going to change the math on that drastically.
What if we play 2 of these? What if we have 2 on board?
If we have 2 on board, then that's 2 enchantments that we played that didn't do anything.
Yeah, I probably already beat you by then. So I think that this is it's definitely build around, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not playing this card unless my deck, most of my creatures are Phyrexians.
Yeah.
If not all. And even then, I don't think it's that good. Maybe build around like C- or D.
I think it's better than that because I do see like the worlds where you do curve out to a degree, though we're going to find once we look at like 1-drops that is kind of hard to do in this set.
Okay.
But where you curve out well, and this suddenly does give you a big attack on turn 4, and then you follow that up with some pressure and it does work for you. I think I'm going to start it at a C, though.
Build around C. Or no?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, like, I think in black-white, you won't have that hard a time. It's not like you have to, like, you see this and you're like, okay, I really need to, like, try to make this work. You're going to find enough random Phyrexians. Like, the problem in my head isn't the Phyrexian creature type is so limiting. It's this doesn't actually add to the board when it comes down.
Right.
And in a deck that's ostensibly about turning creatures sideways, that's a problem.
Right. This thing, man, yeah, I'm a little bit lower on it than you, I think. I think I'm going to say at the C-.
It wouldn't surprise me if we end up where, like, we get a week or 2 into the format and my brain just starts ignoring Sculpted Perfection in packs where I don't notice it until it's way too late for it to matter. But I don't know. I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
This is a card you get in pack 3, and you're like, yes, I got it after drafting Phyrexians already. All right, let's move on. Stormclaw Rager's our next card. It's 1 black-red for an Ogre Warrior. It's a 2/2. Pay 1 mana, sacrifice another creature or artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Stormclaw Rager, and draw a card. Activate only as a sorcery. It's not limited to once a turn. You can churn out your incubators. You can churn out your creatures for as many cards as you can get. I like this guy. This is a really good version of this effect.
Yeah, I mean, like, Black-Red's not really, changing up their game plan very much.
Never.
Basically, every set, they're like, hey, guys, we're doing Sacrifice again. But, like, this is one of the better payoffs for that strategy that we've seen, for sure. I do think it's worth noting that if you run this out on turn 3, then you are going to have your heart broken more often than not. Because people will see it. It will be a dumb little 2/2 for 3, and they will kill it before you get to start going crazy. The optimal play pattern is probably, in most cases, to pretend it's a 4-drop. And, like, do a couple of incubator things, because it does let you sacrifice artifacts. And incubators, you don't have to pay into them and flip them before they become food for this thing. Just, like, let yourself have at least 1 mana open so that you can get a sacrifice just to get the ball rolling. Bring it up to a 3/3, draw your card, So you're not getting a card or a card parity. You're getting card advantage when they go 1-for-1 on it.
Yeah, and I think something to note always with these cards, this type of card, is are there any active treasons in the set? And the follow-up is, are they good? And I believe that there is at least one active treason type effect taking your opponent's creature. And that always makes these cards better in my eyes. That being said, I think I'm going to start this at a C plus. So I think it's got a lot of potential, but like I said, I agree with you. I think it's not a 3-drop. I think this is you play it on turn 4 and have that mana up.
I want to start at a B minus.
Wow. Okay.
Again, I think it's just so easy to make sure that you get some value out of this thing. I think there's enough incubate where you'll always have some random food lying around. There are a couple of cards that have backup that maybe once they've done their backup thing,
you toss them.
Yeah, you just toss them to this. There's a dumb little 2-drop in black at common that just 1/1 makes your opponent discard a card when it comes in. Eat that. Like, there's plenty of random things to feed to this thing, and it is very efficient. I do believe there is also an active treason effect, and it's nice when you have a set that has an active treason effect and an actually efficient way to dispose of the creature that you took, right?
I mean, when's the last time we saw that? Like, I have no idea.
Too often your black-red uncommon is like, pay 4 mana and sacrifice the thing. And like doing a 3 or 4 mana spell plus that in one turn is just not something that comes up very often.
The last one of these I liked was that one in Theros Beyond Death. I think it was pay 1 and sacrifice a creature. You gain a life, they lose a life. Something like that, if you recall.
I know the card you're talking about, Slaughter Priest of Mogus.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I didn't get to play a lot of that set. Something happened where like the entire world shut down very shortly
I
after.
don't remember that. No. You're being so weird right now.
It's a real haze. Are you ready to read some battle cards?
Oh God, yeah, let's do it.
How do you feel about tilting your head a lot?
I'm in. I'm ready.
All right, so let's talk real quick about what battles are. So a battle is a completely new card type. You play it, and as it enters the battlefield, you choose an opponent who protects it. You still control the battle, but it is then up to you to choose to attack the battle as if it were like a planeswalker they control or something like that during combat. Each battle is going to come in with a number of counters, and when you take the last counter off, it's considered defeated. You get to then exile the battle and cast the backside. I think in determining how good a lot of these are, we're going to kind of really be judging the front half.
Absolutely.
In a lot of cases.
I think that it's going to be, first of all, I think it's going to be rare that I care about the backside of battles. I'm a little bit negative on them right now, but I definitely want to hear what you think. But yeah, and also, is it true? I guess we'll see. I feel like a lot of the battles don't have less than 4 defense counters.
I think there's like maybe a couple of them. I mean, we could do a quick scroll. This isn't all of them because it's just the gold ones that we're looking at on the screen that you guys can't see.
Yeah, I only saw 4 and 5.
But it's 4s and 5s right now, but I do believe there's at least one that has 3. But we'll find out together. It'll be a fun journey we go on.
All right, so what do we got first?
So we've got Invasion of Xerax. 2 white-blue for a battle with 4 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand. So once you deal that 4 damage to it, it's going to flip into Varix Paladin, which is a star angel knight with flying. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. So we're going to see with a lot of these gold battles that they also don't all necessarily play into the space that the Signpost uncommons did, which is part of why I kind of chose to do them separately. I think for some of these, if you look at them and you say, oh, that's what this is doing. No, it's not. You're going to get tricked. That said, this one does have a knight on the backside.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Yeah, so it's another knight, and it's a knight that's always at a minimum of 1/1 flyer, and is usually larger than that. That said, the front side, where you just bounce a creature to its owner's hand for 4 mana, if it didn't have a backside at all, I would call that a bad card.
Yeah, 4 is a lot spread across 2 colors to do something like that. And then the question is, so this is the big question with battles, because they pose a question that I don't think a lot of other cards, Planeswalkers are the only real other card that have ever posed the question of, do I want to sacrifice damage that I could do to my opponent to this gives you something. Getting their Planeswalker off board is one thing. This gifts you typically a creature. There's some that have instant sorceries, Planeswalkers on the back. That being said, this is in blue-white. Blue-white's going to be knights primarily, and it seems like you're going to have a pretty solid amount of knights, so I don't think knights are going to have a hard time attacking into a battle. You throw 2-3 knights into this battle, it goes down, and then you have it's going to be a big creature in blue-white, you know? It's going to be, I could see it easily being like a 5 or 6, because you're not flipping this. You might flip it on turn 4, but more realistically, turn 5, 6, 7. It's exciting to hear that we're going to get to turn 7 in this format.
So a couple of things to note. Blue-white, as it normally does have a bunch of flyers in this format. So it is totally reasonable. Like, your opponent might have less to say than normal about whether or not you actually get to hit the battle, right? Like, you have evasive creatures. They're just going to get through. There's nothing they can do about it. Beyond that, the bounce isn't irrelevant here, because there is the chance that you have enough creatures on board where you turn 4, play this battle, return the only blocker that mattered on their board.
That's true.
And then swing a couple of things in, and they say, okay, it doesn't make sense for me to block. You can have your XX flyer, your Star flyer. That said, battles as a whole are going to be really hard to give like real letter grades to, and I'm super excited to get most of them wrong.
Yeah, me too.
I actually think I'm good to start this one at like a C+, honestly.
I that's where I was, so that's awesome. I personally, even though I know this effect is, you know, at sorcery speed, isn't typically great, I think in this blue-white Knights deck, it's going to be good. Because like you said, the blocker that really mattered going away, and then you should almost definitely have enough power to get this thing off board.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I like what, C+ for it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the next one, Invasion of Amonkhet. These are all invasions, and I don't think it's something we addressed before. All these battles are sieges.
Yeah.
Which they're all sieges in this set, but apparently they said that going forward, if we print more battles, they might not be sieges. They might be other types of fights, which we don't know what those types of cards will look like, but still cool to see that design space opening up. 1 blue black for this battle. It starts at 4. And when Invasion of Amonkhet enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards, then each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card.
And it flips into
Lazatep Convert. There we go. It's a zombie 4/4, and you can have it enter the battlefield when it transforms, enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in a graveyard, except it's a 4/4 black zombie in addition to its other types. So even if there's a 7/7, 8/8 in the graveyard, it's always going to be a 4/4 that overwrites its power toughness. It's important to know. That being said, I like that effect. I think that effect's really cool. I don't know how easily blue-black's gonna have at getting rid of this battle, defeating this battle. So let's talk about the front effect. Each player mills 3 cards, then each opponent discards a card, and then you draw a card.
You like Disinformation Campaign?
You know what? I did. I did like Disinformation Campaign.
It's a good one.
Ah, man. This is weird. You know, I think that not putting, you know, power toughness on the board, especially in a turn like turn 3. Turn 3 is typically a very influential turn in the game.
Yeah.
That makes me a little nervous. That being said, you don't have to play it on turn 3, but then maybe later in the game the board's more gummed up and it's harder to attack into this thing. I don't know. What do you think?
So first thing I want to note, blue-black's whole archetype is supposed to be this kind of graveyard matters thing. In particular, you'll see a couple of other commons and uncommons that say, when your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, it does something a little bit better. And neither this nor the Halo Forager really specifies that. They just both have graveyard interactions, and this does a little bit of mill. So just something to keep in mind. I also probably don't want to play this on turn 3 unless my opponent just decided not to play Magic for the first couple of turns. And again, maybe that's something that you're going to see every once in a while in this format, someone who's fiddling around And so you can afford to fire this off a little bit early. It does give you a lot of value on the front side, though. It's going to set up some of your blue-black payoffs. It is going to get you a 2-for-1 because it's going to draw you a card, and it's going to make them discard a card. And that's another reason actually to fire it off a little bit later. Wait until they have only 1 or 2 cards in hand, and it's a painful choice for them, as opposed to turn 3 where they're like, oh, I'm mana flooded anyway, let me get rid of this random land, or, oh, I wasn't going to play this until turn 7 anyway. Like, you'll give them a little bit more choices if you fire it off immediately. I do think that you're going to struggle to get this one off the field or exiled and then transformed, more so than some of the other colors. But if you do manage to do it, like, a 4/4 is a good, it's a good reward for getting it off the field. And on top of that, you were saying that this is a bomb-heavy set. So if you're milling a couple of your opponent's cards, or you're playing interactive Magic where you actually answer their threats when they get put down, then maybe occasionally you do get to have that be a 4-mana Thalia and the Gitrog monster or something stupid like that, right? I don't think that you can always count on it being something big like that, but the fact that it has a lot of, it has a high ceiling, I guess I would say.
It has a very high ceiling. And the floor's not horrible.
And I think blue-black is going to be a deck in this format that does play slower for sure. It wants to spend its earlier turns kind of controlling the board. And you do have a couple of decent blockers in that deck. So I think this is an exciting one.
I like the card a lot.
Yeah.
Gosh, I think that C+, B-, because I think, like you said, the ceiling is incredible, right? And if you have one of those bombs in your deck, then you always hate to mill your bomb. But then this card says, no, you still get it.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah.
It's a 4/4, which, might be bigger, might be smaller. What do you think?
I think I'm also struggling between C+ and B- for this one. I'm going to go ahead and say B-, and that might be a little bit like too naive on my part. Like,
you could dream.
I want it to be a B-. If this is the kind of format where this card is like a B-, then like I'm happy. I'm living my dream.
Was Disinformation Campaign a B-?
I don't remember.
Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah, the Ravnica Allegiance days and Guilds of Ravnica days are enough of a haze for me, where like I know that deck was really fun. I don't remember how good it was though.
It was really fun. I love those sets.
So next up, Invasion of Asgul. Black-red for a siege that comes in with 4 counters. When it enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker and loses 1 life. When you cast the other side, you get, and let's read this together, Ashen Reaper, a 2/1 zombie elemental with menace, and at the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on the Reaper if a permanent was put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn.
Ooh, I don't like this card. I don't think this card's very good.
Me neither. I mean, like, the front side is just like a weird edict, right?
It's a weird edict, and it costs 2 different colors of mana.
Yeah, that's usually not a great place to be. Again, you're giving your opponent choices, and you're giving them choices in a format where they might just have random incubate 1 tokens and stuff like that, right? So it's going to be hard to get good value off of that front side. And then when you flip it into a 2/1 menace that will get bigger. Like, that trigger is not particularly difficult to trigger, but it's going to take a little bit before it's like a real threat. And you had to actively say, I'm going to put some of my resources towards getting this 2/1 onto the field. And then again, as a 2/1, it is going to die to a Stiff Breeze. So, yeah, I don't think I'm a fan of this one.
I'm going to put it at a D.
Our first D.
Yeah, I just think it's not good. Like, I think there's gonna be a time where this is okay, but I'm not actively looking to put this in any of my decks. There is a world though where I guess with battles, playing them later and then just attacking them right there. Because on turn 2, this gets rid of the creature the way you want it to. And then I guess you could attack it later. But okay, I unlocked a 2/1 menace that might get bigger. I don't know. I don't think it's good.
Yeah, I think I'm good to start it at a D plus. Again, this might be a little
You're so
idealistic,
hopeful.
but I know it's the kind of person I am. I don't know, like again, you're in the black red deck, right? So you're going to be able to trigger it pretty consistently. And if it's getting big at a quick enough rate, then your opponent is going to have to deal with it. But again, just getting that value off the front side is going to be tricky. And it is occasionally just going to die without doing anything. And it's a shame because the card looks so cool.
It does
It's
look
like
cool.
just a zombie that's on fire.
Yeah, the art is very cool. Am I a
That plane is
weirdo?
cool.
Yeah, it is. Am I a weirdo for wishing that this was a 1/2? Am I a
Honestly,
weirdo?
no. Actually,
Okay.
I don't think you are because
Yeah.
like getting it out of shock range immediately with one trigger would probably be really sweet.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, let's move on. We got Invasion of Urgamon. I don't know if I've ever heard of Urgamon before. That's a red-green battle with 5 defense counters on it. When it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Then you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. And it flips into Truga Cliff Charger. It's a Rhino. It's a 3/4 trample. And when it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, oh God, it's so hard. Search your library for a land or battle card. Put it in your hand, then shuffle.
you got it, bud.
Okay, you know what? I kind of like this guy. So this ramps you. This puts you
Yes.
onto your next turn. You're on turn 3, you got 4 mana.
Mhm.
And if you have an extra land or you have a 7-drop in your hand that just it's not coming, you pitch it, you get a new card.
So go with me on this journey real quick. Where turn 2 you play this, and then turn 3 you play the red green signpost uncommon and swing it, get the counter immediately. Have a 4/4 trample swinging on turn 3 at your battle.
Done.
You're not going to flip it immediately because unfortunately this is one of the ones that comes in with 5 counters. But again, this is the deck where you're going to try to flip battles, right?
Yes.
Like red green actively wants to do that. You get enough value on the front part where I think you're generally happy with it. Again, it's a little bit of a worse top deck. You can just hold on to a random land in hand that you don't need anymore and then play this, dish the land, get something else. And then when you do flip it over to the 3/4 part, you can again ditch a random card and go find another battle.
Yeah.
Or a land, but I don't think you're usually going to do that.
No, probably not at that point in the
Yeah.
game. That being said, there are some times where you're gonna need that 6th, 7th land,
Mhm.
and it's just gonna be good.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna start Invasion of Urgamon because that deck, it seems like that deck really wants this card. Battles are a little hard to rate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with like a B-, I think.
I think-
I really like taking you to turn 4,
Mhm.
or 4 mana on turn 3.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to start it as well. Again, you are going to see some other cards that just like deal with battles, like do a bunch of damage to them on their own or whatever. So the 5 isn't going to be insurmountable by
Mhm.
any means. Also, Urgamon, I think, showed up like way, way, way early in Magic. We're not a
Okay.
lore podcast, just to be clear. So I could be entirely wrong, but when I looked it up on the wiki, like a couple of friends were like, what the hell is this place? The only things I found out were 2 old people fought there and bears don't exist. Which is
That sucks.
About-
That's the worst plane ever.
I don't know if that's true, but it is some of the least information a wiki page has ever given me. So that's delightful.
All right, what's next?
So next up, assuming the mouse wants to play in the zone with me, is going to be Invasion of Moog or Moog. I don't know. We'll find out together someday. 2 green white for a 5 counter siege. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control.
That's an effect I really like.
Yeah, it is at sorcery speed, which is a little bit sad. But again, you're in the right deck for this, right? So
Absolutely.
like that's going to be good. And it flips into Bloom Wielder Dryads, a 3/3 Dryad with Ward 2. And at the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. That's sick.
This card is awesome. I really like this card. I want to be hanging out at Moag, dude. I want to go to Moag. This is awesome. I really like effects like this. I'm a big 1/1 counters guy, and I'm a big Selesnya guy. Wait, this is black white or green white?
Green white.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a big Selesnya guy. I like green white a lot. I think that this effect 4 mana at sorcery speed, like you said, in 2 different colors, a little bit shaky, but especially, you know, if that signpost uncommon tells us anything, this set really, really likes +1/+1 counters, at least in green white. And putting one on all of your creatures, for one, that makes your signpost uncommon gigantic.
Huge, yeah.
And then it flips into this thing. It just keeps stacking +1/+1 counters at the end of your turn. I really like this card. I think that this is I think it's like a B- for me.
I'm gonna put this one at B- as well. It might end up a little lower than that. Like, I could see a world where that ends up being the case. You are in an aggressive deck, but not necessarily one where you're going to be aiming to flip it all the time. You don't have as much interaction for that specific purpose. And it's going to feel real bad if your opponent's actually dealt with all your creatures, right?
Yeah, well,
like, it's
sure.
Straight unplayable if you don't have creatures on board. But I think that you'll have enough synergies and you'll have enough creatures to put counters on more often than not, where it's probably... And part of me wants to put it at C+. There's the idealism just out the window, I guess. But C+, B-, somewhere in that range, you're probably still happy playing it in any green-white deck.
Absolutely. I'm hopeful about this one. And I am keeping a very close eye on any battle that has green in the cost. Because I know red-green's the one that really seems like it's going to be the best at flipping battles. Splashing, probably not going to be too hard. Especially with it. Yeah, you got the tap lands. And I'm sure you have the silly little green commons and uncommons that also get you mana of any color. So I'm a little bit higher on that one.
Okay.
But moving on to the next one, Invasion of New Capenna. White-black. It's got 4 defense counters, and when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. When you do, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls. Exile! Yeah. And it flips into an equipment.
Yeah, it does.
What's that? Holy Frazzle Cannon. Wow. That might win best name in the set, because that's incredible. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature, and each creature you control that shares a creature type with it, and equip 1.
So this one does want to go into the black-white Phyrexian.
Yeah, set. It really does.
I do think it's worth noting that, like, yeah, you have to sacrifice one of your artifacts or creatures in order to get that exile immediately. But again, this is the Phyrexian deck. You're going to have incubator tokens lying around. Like, that's the quote-unquote joke with this one. You feed it an unhatched egg, and the egg kills someone really bad.
Yeah, I like that rate a lot. I really liked, there was one in Ravnica Allegiance, the white-black instant.
Final payment.
Final payment, you could sack a creature or pay 5 life.
Or Rite of Oblivion out of Shadows.
Yeah.
Midnight Hunt.
Yeah, and I like that effect a lot. I often honestly paid the 5 life. It was not always correct, but I didn't want to sacrifice my creatures. But I think this looks pretty good. And I think that this is a very flipping it into equipment is pretty interesting, but I think this is a very powerful equipment.
Yeah, for sure. Again, it works well with the kind of go wide tribal strategy that you're trying to get in this deck in the first place. It has a cheap equip cost at 1, so it's not going to be hard to just put it on something randomly. And if you are putting it on random incubator tokens and stuff like that, maybe you don't actually care if the equipped creature has to attack, but it doesn't matter if it lives.
True.
It will immediately get the 1/1 counter on attack, so that's a nice benefit. That will help you open up attacks that you didn't necessarily have before. But again, if you need to throw a random 1/1 into harm's way, I feel like that's kind of on point for Phyrexia
to pump the rest of your team.
Yeah, all will be one.
Absolutely.
All that fun stuff.
So what are you ranking this thing?
I think I'm gonna go with C+ again.
I think C+ is fair. I think that this card is gonna. I think it might overperform personally, but I'm good with C+ right now.
All right. So next up we have Invasion of Kaladesh. Blue-red for a 4 defense counter siege. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying.
2 mana for a 1/1 flyer. Okay.
Super on rate. We're already doing good. But it transforms into Aetherwing Golden Scale Flagship.
It's a vehicle.
It is a star 4 legendary artifact vehicle with flying. Power equal to the number of artifacts you control, and crew 1.
This is a weird card. Is blue red doing artifacts in this set?
It's Convoke.
Yeah. So, well, it gives you a token.
Yeah, it gives you a 1/1, which does help you peck in to get the counters off of it in the first place, right? So that's not nothing. It is technically, it makes a body, which means that it technically works with Convoke. But that's like saying every creature works with Convoke. It's a little bit of a gimme.
Yeah.
And Aetherwing is always going to be a 1/4 flyer at minimum, and you can, again, make it stronger with incubator tokens and stuff like that, which are in enough colors where you'll be able to get a couple of them if you want them. And I think there's a little bit of treasure as well in this set, but don't quote me on that.
There is.
Oh, thank you.
We saw it in Urgamon.
Oh, yeah.
The worst plane
right.
ever.
So, I don't know. This one's really weird. I don't feel like it plays into what blue-red really wants to do all that well. It's a bunch of little asterisks. Like, well, actually, it kind of works with this, and it kind of works with this. So, honestly, I think C is as high as I'm willing to go for it right now. And I'm willing to be proven very wrong.
I'm also willing to be proven wrong. I think I'm going to be a bit of a pessimist about it. I'm going to give it a C-. Okay. I don't like that rate. 2 mana for a 1/1 flying. And you probably have better things to do than flipping into a star 4 flyer. Because the second it's flipped into, there's a thing to kill, and then it's gone. I wasted 4 power of attack into it.
Yeah, granted, it is a vehicle, so you kind of choose when it's vulnerable.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
So they have to use instant speed removal, but that's a lot of what people are going to try to use anyway. It does die to random naturalize effects out of the sideboard. I don't know. I'm excited to die to it. I'm going to die to it pre-release. I know it's going to happen, but
yeah. Let's move on to Invasion of Lorwyn. Really happy to see Lorwyn back. It's one of my favorite planes. I was not playing at that time, but just looking back, I love the art and I love what the set was trying to do. 4 black-green for this one. It starts with 5 defense counters. And when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-elf creature an opponent controls with power X or less, where X is the number of lands you control. So probably 6. Power 6 or less, which is probably almost every creature that's going to be relevant. And it transforms into Winnowing Forces. It's an elf warrior star. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control.
It's a weird one.
It is really weird.
You do love your 2-color 6-mana removal to have 2 riders on what it's allowed to target, don't you?
Yeah, I really do. That being said, removal's removal. And I mean, do we know how many elves are in the set? Probably not a ton.
There's a couple, but again, not enough where you're like, oh, this isn't going to kill a lot of the important creatures. It will kill most of the important creatures. And on the off chance that your opponent happens to have an important elf, I don't know, play a second removal spell, Forehead. And the equal to number of lands you control, again, will usually. Sometimes you're going to be staring down a couple of the bombs in this set are really dumb and have 12 or 18 power. Sometimes you're not killing them with Invasion of Lorwyn.
No.
But again, you're going to have to play other cards to get around Multani and Yargle or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the flip side is like, fine.
Yeah, 6 mana is a lot for this kill spell. And then, like you said, the backside, it's just a huge creature, which I think can possibly go a long way,
Yeah.
It's easy to say, hey, this dies to removal. I don't care. I'm not super high on this one. I'm definitely I'm planning on casting this spell at least once just to see how it is. 6 mana is a lot, though. I think that I can't go higher than a C- on it.
Yeah, C- is probably fine.
Because like the floor is like I paid 6 mana. I killed like probably your best thing.
Yeah, like usually it will do something relevant on the board. It's just not terribly efficient at anything it does.
No.
But you're allowed to get away with a couple of those cards every once in a while.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the last battle. So we're going to go with Invasion of Kylum. which is 2 red white for a siege that comes in with 5 defense counters. When it enters the battlefield, up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+0, vigilance, and haste until end of turn. When you flip it, it becomes Valor's Reach Tag Team, which is a sorcery. Wouldn't have guessed that based on the name. However, it does create 2 3/2 red-white warrior creature tokens with whenever this creature and at least one other creature token attack, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So the joke is that it's the set that Battle Bond took place on, that plane. So you're supposed to swing both of the tokens together and they each trigger and they both get the 1/1 counters, which is a pretty decent reward for flipping this one, I would say. Because they're both going to be attacking as 4 power each.
Yeah, but they're 3/2s and then they flip into, or they turn into 4/3s when you attack with them. I don't know how excited I am to be just jamming 2 4/3s with no evasion at that point in the game.
Well, those are 1/1 counters for what that's worth.
That's true.
And in red white, I think you're going to have some incentive to have dumb little combat tricks. So like 4/3s are meaningful. Your opponent's going to have to block them generally. And they won't always, especially because you've been the aggro player. Invasion of Kylum just straight up says you're going to get 2 creatures get +2/+0, vigilance, and haste until end of turn. You are putting that on creatures and you are swinging them and you are hurting your opponent. So your opponent's going to have limited ways to kind of deal with all of that. That said, this kind of runs to the same problem the green-white one does, where sometimes you play and you're like, oh, I don't have things to actually affect.
Yeah, and even if you have creatures on, there's chances you still don't have attacks that work.
Yeah, +2/+0 there's a 0 in there for toughness, right? So like you might be just hitting harder than you were already going to if you had attacks, but it's not going to open up a lot of attacks unless you're just like you have a bunch of lower power stuff against your opponent's high toughness blockers. And in red white, I don't feel like that's going to be a common occurrence.
Yeah, I honestly think this card's pretty bad. I don't think that playing this is going to make much of a difference at all. Probably just going to be a dead card in most scenarios. I'm looking at it like a DD- personally.
I think it's got to be higher than that. Again, I think red-white is the deck that's poised to be the fastest in this set. And like, while it might not open up a ton of attacks, if red-white's being aggressive enough, it might not need to open up a lot. It might need to just be able to get through with a little bit of extra damage and then like use one of its other effects to close out the game. I'm willing to start it at a C- personally, and I could see it going in either direction. It's entirely possible that maybe the red-white decks will be very fast in this format, and this thing will be an absolute grown fest, where it comes out and you're like, oh, I'm going to die. But it's entirely possible also that this format will not only be slow enough, but the red-white deck in particular won't be fast enough to really make use of it, and you will ignore it more often than not. But I think C-, like, again, battles are really hard to gauge, and I do think it's a good reward if you flip it, which I know there's going to be some boards where it doesn't matter. But
right, exactly.
So part of it also is like, if you're actually flipping it, unless you use like a burn spell on it or something, that means that you had attacks to get through to flip it, right?
Yeah.
Which means the 3/2s are more likely to also have attacks once they start attacking. So that's also worth noting.
Yeah. I just on a glance, there's more battles in the other colors. I don't see a battle that I'm super excited to like first pick. These are all multicolored for now. So you don't usually first pick multicolor cards. But I'm excited to get them later in the pack when I've decided my colors. But definitely not super early.
Yeah, it's again so difficult to kind of parse exactly how strong these are. I won't be surprised if a couple of weeks from now there's one of these where like you see it and you're like, hell yeah, my pack had an invasion of Amonkhet in it or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's the dream. We really want our packs to have that one and it to be good.